Hello, everyone. This is Nanette Kennedy with Evolution Revolution and Humanities Team. And this is our weekly book discussion group. We are reading Conversations with God, Book 4, Awaken the Species by Neale Donald Walsch. And I think we're ready to get started, Linda.
Okay, this is chapter 14, and Neale is speaking. I'm won over. I see how much of this information about highly evolved beings can be useful and can help us as we work to awaken ourselves. Or, as you put it, to allow ourselves to know that we already are awake and to help awaken the species. I feel I want to go out now and share many of these principles, which, as you've pointed out, are not otherworldly, but simply grander notions of how to love. First, I want to practice living them, and then I want to share them with others. And I would love it if you would first offer a short commentary exploring some of the points on that list so that I can know what this all can look like in real terms as I seek to live them and share them in real life. I'd be happy to. Let's start at the top of the list. Number 1, an awakened species sees the unity of all life and lives into it. Humans in an awakened state often deny it or ignore it. Highly evolved beings never question that all things are one thing. They know experientially that there is only one thing, and all things are a part of the one thing there is. Because they exist in another dimension, they can actually see this visually, not just conceptually. They're able to view the submolecular structure of all things. They observe that there is only one energy in the universe, one source or force, and that this source or force simply mixes up the foundational elements of which it is comprised, adding some and subtracting others, then alters the vibrational frequency of those variously combined elements to generate differing expressions of the essential essence. I've called these differing expressions singularizations of singularity, which is a great name for them, because that is exactly what they are. All things in existence are created through this alchemy, which produces the recipe for the universal soup. The elements are attracted to each other through the conscious choice making of each element, impacted as they are by the combined energy of the essential essence comprising what we call your soul. Wait a minute. Consciousness exists at the elemental level? Of course. What you call the elemental level is consciousness. It is consciousness in action. Every cell of your body acts with intelligence. You can't so much cut your little finger without creating a cellular rush to the site of the injury to repair the damage. You think the cells of your body don't know what they're doing and why? And I tell you, every element of the universe is imbued with this foundational intelligence. Oh my God! Precisely. Well, can they talk to each other? Okay, talk is a funny word to use here. I'm actually asking, can the cells of the body communicate element to element? Of course they can. What do you think thought is? Thoughts are cells communicating with one another? That's exactly what they are. Do you know how the brain cells work? Yes, but when you talk about the brain, you're talking about neurons and peptides and somas and dendrites and all that stuff. The cells throughout our body are not like the cells of the brain. They aren't? Who told you that? Let me repeat. Every ounce of life is imbued with foundational intelligence. Read that. Every cell, every particle, every submolecular element in the universe. Well, then there must be a way that I can get the cells of my body to do whatever I communicate that I want them to do, like heal me from an illness, for instance. You're right if you're suggesting that the energy of your thoughts has an influence over the cells of your body. Well, I remember learning of Emile Coué, a French psychologist and pharmacist who introduced in the early part of the 20th century a process of psychotherapy with a foundation in optimistic and conscious autosuggestion. As an experiment, he invited ill people who were ill, to repeat at least 20 times a day, and especially in the morning and before retiring, a simple mantra. I'm not going to read the French. They got it in French, and then in English. Every day, in every way, I am getting better and better. And his results? A remarkable percentage of his patients got better. Of course. My heavens. Can it then be possible to get most of the cells of the body to choose the same thing most of the time? This is the same question you're asking yourselves right now regarding the rest of the people on the planet. It is. It's the same question exactly. And the answer is, it is possible through alignment. The choice to act co-jointly, in unison, and in harmony with each other is made by elements of life when there is alignment on purpose within the sector or area where those elements exist. The cells of your body will act in unison and in harmony with each other when there is alignment with the soul on the direction each moment in your life will take from a cellular level based on the soul's agenda in that femtosecond. Okay, I had to look that one up. A femtosecond is 1/quadrillionth or 1/millionth of a billionth of a second. Exactly. And your soul is the source of the energy of the essential essence that resides within you. The soul is God in us. It is indeed, not just in thought, not just in word, but in deed. The soul is the expression, now being individualized, of the being that is God. It is God being manifested. In our case on earth, the soul is God being a human, and a human is a soul being God. Exactly, precisely, absolutely, positively, manifestly. You have said it perfectly. Wow, this is really getting us more deeply into metaphysics than I ever thought I'd go. But I've got to ask, are you telling me that every submolecular particle of every expression of life in the universe has to be talked into something in order to do it? Are you saying that the tiniest particle of energy has the consciousness to make decisions by evaluating choices arising out of alternatives placed before it? Man, this is too much. Forget about the rest of the people on the planet. How do I even get all the parts of me to agree on doing the same thing? That's the question, isn't it? That's the biggest question of all time. But it's actually easier than you think. Monsieur Q says it's actually as easy as I think. And that is the biggest secret of life. When you understand this, you've moved to a place of mastery. Okay, so tell me how this works metaphysically. I've been told 1,000 times about the power of our thoughts. But how does this work? What makes this work metaphysically? You told me, and I know that you have an insatiable mind, but do you really want to get into the alchemy of the universe? I really hadn't planned this conversation. I'm just noticing that it's going where it's going. I don't want to put off for too long the rest of our deep exploration of that list you gave us But this is too fascinating for me to pass up. Can we just look at this briefly? Okay, then. Obviously, this could fill an entire book. But here is Metaphysics 101, a short course in ultimate reality. As we've noted a while back in this conversation, all elements of life are imbued with what you call, in your language, intelligence, or awareness of its inherent function. This awareness fills each element to its maximum capacity. That is, every element is imbued with divine intelligence utterly, full out, from border to border. Indeed, it would not be incorrect to say that the element itself is intelligence in particle form. So each element of life, down to the tiniest submolecular particle, is a part of the mind of God. With your sense of poetry, that would be how you put it, and I have no reason to argue with you. Now, the elements of the essential essence are attracted to each other by an aspect or characteristic that you call, in human terms, common function. That is, they are all trying to do something, and it is the same thing. They are all in action, forever moving, continuously vibrating, but not without purpose. Their purpose is simply to be. They realize that life is movement. If movement ever stops, that which you call life would not exist. So life equals motion equals life. Yes. Now, as to what element wants to be, that doesn't matter. The individual element does not have a preference in the matter. It simply wants to exist. Its desire is to be. What is called alignment, then, and the subsequent joint or unified action to which you refer, is created by the vibrational influence of any force larger than individual element. It is this way throughout all of nature. The larger the force, the more pull it has on every smaller element within its impact area. So every element within any impact area will fall into alignment with the larger force that is pulling on it. No one has ever said this to me in this way. Why can't this be explained in this simple way to every child? It can. And in civilizations of highly evolved beings, it is. This awareness This awareness is shared with every emerging entity, each of whom is told about the oneness of life and the circle of life. So if you as creative beings wish all the elements of life, down to the tiniest particle, to move in a particular direction, you must create alignment using the force of combined energy focused in a particular way. And thought is that force. Then what creates that focus? How do you cause energy, that is thought, to be focused in a particular way? Desire. Desire exists in the soul. It is the soul defined in one word. The soul is the local expression of God's desire, which is to experience itself. Desire is the creator of intention. Intention is the creator of thought. Thought is the creator of action. Action is the creator of outcome. Not all thought, however, is created by the intention arising out of the soul's desire. Thought can also, in a sense, have a mind of its own. That is, the energy impulse that produces a thought can arise out of the body's desires. This produces a different kind of action, which can generate a totally different outcome than the soul had in mind. The soul put its intended outcome in your mind, but your body made you go out of your mind for a moment. This is what happens when you think you are a body, as opposed to knowing that you are a soul. Well, most of us only hope that we have a soul or believe that we have a soul, but do not know for sure. But we are sure we have a body. So this is what most of us think of ourselves as. Once again, you're pulling all this together beautifully. That's the way to put the puzzle pieces into place. Now, every element of the essential essence, from the individual soul to every individual energy unit in the body and in the universe, is imbued with desire, which is a particular form or expression of energy in direct proportion of its size. The smallest elements have the smallest desire. The larger elements, which are created by the smallest elements being drawn to them, coalescing and thus producing them, have greater desire. The amount of desire existing within any given element of life can be found to exist in direct proportion to that element's size. Think of desire as the spark plug in the engine of life. So if what we call God is everything that is, that would make God's desire the biggest desire of all. Correct. Again, very insightful. And God's desire is that every sentient being, that is every element of life, large enough and sophisticated or complex enough to reflect self-awareness, has the ability to create its own reality using free will and conscious choice. This is an alchemic way of saying that the foundational elements of life, the tiny individual particles of the essence, essential essence, have no preference in the matter of how the combination of elements align. Your soul, which is a collection of such particles, does have an intention. Your soul is the local presence of the divine intention, which is to express divinity in every moment as each sentient being defines it. This being has the freedom to create whatever it chooses, which is godliness in its grandest demonstration. Or, to put this all still another way, you all have free will. You will note that I have been saying to you from the very first conversation we ever had with regard to how your life is lived, God has no preference in the matter. My only desire is that your preference be empowered. Therefore, that which matters, that is, that which you cause to turn from pure energy into solid matter, is up to you, individually and collectively. In making this choice, you can either listen to your body, to your mind, or to your soul. And that is Metaphysics 101, a short course in ultimate reality.
Let's pause there for a second. And I want to say hi to Shabana and Anne. And is that Tammy? Tammy that used to...
Hello.
It is you. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to suggest today that if you're making a comment, when you're finished making a comment, say over, so that we don't talk over each other. Just because it can be kind of confusing when we do that, and I've done it myself a few times. So, anyway, who would like to start the conversation?
Yes, please, Nanette. It's Angela.
Go ahead.
I've got a question just from what Linda just read about listen to your body or your mind or your soul. I think it's easy to listen to your mind and your body, but it's not quite so difficult to know what your soul is saying. So how would one know what the soul desires? Over.
I'm going to take a little stab at that. Most of us were raised with the expression of trust your gut. And I've always thought that's kind of a misnomer because it should be trust your soul. And I'm sure everybody on this call has done this one at some point or another in their lives. While there was something inside saying, no, this door's not here for you. Or this person isn't for you. And we've said, oh, the heck with that. And we've gone ahead and done what our intuition, our soul has said, be warned. And I think in particular of when I was 19 years old and I was getting married and my mother was crying her head off and we weren't even at the part of the getting married yet. Just the idea of her saying, you're only 19, you're so young. And I was like, God Almighty could have come out of the sky and said, Nanette, don't do this. And I would have said, this is my life. And I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And, within a few months, it didn't work because I was too young. I had no idea what I was getting into. And so that's one example. But does anybody want to add to that? Over?
I'll tell you what springs to my mind is in CWG, it says the highest thought, the clearest word, and the grandest something else, which I've forgotten. And you know that comes from God, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few thoughts, responses. Love what you started with, Nanette, is, trust your gut, your intuition, your soul. Conversations with God repeatedly says that feelings are the language of the soul. Yeah, there's a little distinction going there between actual feelings, genuine feelings, and then other feelings generated, say, more by the body, but nonetheless, feelings are the language of the soul. And then the more we live our lives as a spirit-based, a love-based, a oneness person, the more we overcome our ego and our conscious mind and the way it tries to. The conscious mind, the ego, is like the tail wagging the dog, right? So if we can sort of put that tail in check and then start living from the place of oneness, the place from, we're all God expressed, then it becomes easier to see the true intuition, the truth that's coming from our being, and follow that. It becomes easier as we overcome ego and deal with our shadow and all that. It becomes easier to just know what is the soul message here. Over.
Thank you. I think you bring up a really good point about the feeling part, because especially if you're talking to children and you can say, if you're having a bad feeling about something, then listen to that voice within and trust it, and even to us adults, if you're getting a bad feeling, and for those of us that are more empathic than others, I get that feeling and I'm like, no way, Jose. I'm backing away. Not that I've perfected this by any stretch of the means, because every now and then I've gone, oh, what the heck. But I think trusting your feelings is really, really important. And it kind of ties back into with what God is saying here about this, whatever that was, like 1/1000th of a second. But all these things are working together. It's not just one thing working off on its own. And I think you can even pull science into this a little bit, because they talk about the fight or flight or paralyze, I think is what it is.
Freeze.
Yeah, freeze. And so if we pay attention to these things in our life, if something's telling us to flight, you know. I don't want to say that I want to freeze, but I've had days where I've felt frozen, you know, where it's like I just and I can't pinpoint exactly where it's coming from, but it's one of those things that I could be cleaning the house, I could be working, it could be, which is working, cleaning the house. But I think it's a very good point that you bring up, Alton, about staying in touch with your feelings. And I don't know how many other people, while we were reading, thought of this, but I kept thinking of the law of attraction. And there's part of the law of attraction that really resonates with me. And on the other hand, there's a part of the law of attraction that says, as long as you're not going to say to me, well, I wonder why you brought that on to yourself. Because there can be that kind of languaging. I'm going to let somebody else talk. Over.
Hi, this is Anne. How are you today?
Good. Hi, Anne.
Hi. So I have a little story, which is I have an emotional support animal, and it's a cat. And basically, we've been together 10 years. We've never been apart. So basically, what I feel is she's a barometer a lot of the times for my feelings or for what's going on with me. And she had a tumor and needed surgery. And I was really I was really having a problem with it more than she was. And what happened was that the day before I was supposed to take her in, she bolted, and she's an indoor cat and never runs away or anything like that. And she ran away, and she was gone for 8 hours. And so I went outside at like 7:30, and I said, okay, Shana, wherever you are, okay, if this is about that you don't want surgery tomorrow, that's fine. I will cancel the surgery if you come back by 8 o'clock. If you don't come back by 8 o'clock, then the surgery's on. And I went in the house, and within 10 minutes, the cat was back. Now, is that a sign? Well, I just said, well, since I put it out there and I gave her my word, I was going to keep my word, and I canceled the surgery and scheduled it for the following week. The next week, I had the same kind of anxiety and apprehension about it and wanted to cancel. But in this case, it was different. It wasn't like a sign. What I realized is that I really didn't have the information of what they were doing. I didn't ask the right questions yet, so when I contacted the vet, I asked him to email me in writing so I could read, when I asked the questions of what I needed to know. And when I got it in writing, which was new for me, because somehow, audio processing, when he told me all this stuff, it just went in one ear and out the other. So when I read it, I realized, oh, well, she really needed the surgery immediately, and I was fine. And so she had the surgery, and bottom line, she's fine. But I just wanted to share that story in the lieu of, you have gut feelings all the time. And how do you know which voice to listen to? Like what's the sign or what's not the sign? And for me, it's very clear. That when my gut says something, it comes from a different place. It feels different. It's very different. And I know that it's this other part speaking to me. So anyway, I'm over. I think but anyway, I just thought it was an interesting story to share.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I have great faith in what our animals can tell. Everything from knowing that a storm is coming before the storm gets here, or, my cat, if I'm feeling a little down, my cat's like, I'm not feeling down right now, but my cat sits right behind me on my desk chair almost all the time. And I always have to walk in my office and say, share the chair. And really? She actually knows what it means, and she moves. But I think there's a lot of studies about animals being able to pick up on things like that. And I like how you call your cat, your emotional, your emotional something or other.
Thermometer.
Thermometer, yep. And I think that's important. And it also kind of reminds me of when Wayne Dyer does, I can't remember which book he said this in, but he said, you know, we as human beings are the ones that are the worry warts. Animals don't tend to worry.
No.
They may be able to pick up on our senses and it might make them anxious, but they're not sure why they're anxious. And he used the example of he had been on a photo safari in Africa, and he went for several days in a row. And one day they saw a lion attack the backside of a zebra and just chewed out part of the animal's rear end. And everybody was just aghast. And the guy that was the leader of the safari said, "This is Africa, and this is how things happen." And he said, "But that zebra, if it makes it through this, will be fine in a couple hours, because he's not worrying about what if. The next day they saw the zebra, and the zebra was with his herd, and he was injured, but he was surrounded, by other zebras trying to protect that zebra. So that kind of reminded me of that. Over, if somebody else wants to respond.
Yeah, I want to add.
I have to wait. I need to respond really fast about something. My message was kind of what I was talking about wasn't about my cat. It was about signs and your gut feelings and more about knowing what to listen to, because that was what was said before I came in with the story, was talking about gut feelings and listening and how do we know what signs are. So that's all, and I'm over.
No,
that's
I got that. I got that.
Okay,
It's just
good.
something
Right.
you said made me think of the
okay.
the zebras. Over.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Over.
Kirsten?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that. A lot of this comes with time, age, experience. I mean, as you point out, when you were 19, it's, a lot of these things are developed with growth. So as we get older, we learn these things, like you said, the hard way. It didn't work out. And so my mother's always telling me, don't do that. And of course you're going to do it, because I always do the opposite of what she said to do. But I mean, I'm just honing that now, these signals and so forth. I'm 52 now. So, I have experience of all doing those mistakes and doing those, gut instincts and not following them and just ignoring them. And I think about a lot of this is with growth. I mean, I always see older people with wisdom and experience because they've had it, so they know it. They know what to do and what not to do now. It's stronger. Those feelings become stronger as we're older. Emotions about it or anything like that. Over.
It's a good point. And
could I possibly add something before you go on?
Go ahead.
Thank you kindly. Here's what I'd like to say. When I get up in the morning, I pray that my soul and my personality are one, that they're aligned, and that I catch the divine hint. Because in the spiritual training that I've been following, the divine hint is the soul's direction or instruction, and it's compared to a lightning strike, that it only appears for a split second, and it's up to the disciple to catch it. That this is information which is very valuable and is entirely different from this plane of existence. And by that I'm referring to feelings or body language, but what the body's saying, or logic. That this is the soul giving guidance that defies every other form of information. And I usually just see an image of what I should do, and very often is completely out of, I mean, it's just so strange that I know it's not, that it's right. But the other thing that I find very amazing and more valuable than this, it boils down to faith, that I just do it because I trust it, and whatever the outcome, I accept. I'm sure this is the definition of insanity, but we're not going there. The other thing, which is even more, I'm an observer of my own personality. People will say things to me, and these are not anyone that means that wishes me well. People will essentially attack me, and I say stuff and I'm stunned. Where did this come from? And they shut up tight, and I would never ever have even come up with it. So that's how I know that just asking for the alignment in the morning and to catch the divine hint. Sometimes there's no divine hint. My mouth goes, and I'm thrilled.
That's good. Thank you for that. And I wasn't sure whether you were going to say, and sometimes stuff flies out of my mouth that I don't want to fly out of my mouth. Because I know with being a parent, that can be an easy trap to fall into, where you forget that you're the parent, and they're the child, and then you stop in the middle of something and go, I'm acting like you're my sister or my brother, when we were kids, and you find yourself in the middle of it. But I think you're right. Somebody that I know taught me this thing, that when you're feeling like you might be getting out of alignment, you put your hand on your heart when you speak to somebody, because there's something about doing that action. And I'm thinking about the other day where this guy was in the parking lot at the grocery store, and I didn't see him, and I didn't hit him, but he looked really angry at me. And I got out of my car and I put my hand on my heart, and I said, I am so sorry. And he was like, it's okay. He wasn't mad, but and I think we just need to treat each other and ourselves in a way where this kind of science-y chapter, to me, was a little bit difficult, but I think the conversation we've just had kind of pulls it together. Over.
Hi, this is Anne.
Hi.
I'm going to throw in something different here, because basically what you said about age and stuff is that the values that I have at one point is the level of consciousness that I'm at. And so I make agreements and contracts and stuff that are pertinent and vital in that moment. But when my consciousness changes and I shift, what seemed to be true and valid at one point, at one stage, becomes invalid at the next. So on that premise, we outgrow everything. So it's a matter of discarding and seeing, what, like old limited beliefs and stuff. But the thing is that anything that you push aside and you discharge as spiritually relevant, later on, I feel an awakening will return to be the very thing that is coming back to you so that you can love and embrace it. So eventually, I guess everything will be unraveled, you know. So anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but let me just see. But what if, this is my last thought, is what if what we really are is the personality that is unique in spirit, embodying the physical form as a vessel of awakening for the liberation and well-being of everybody. I'm done.
Okay, I think that's a really good point. And there's a Buddhist saying that says, I am the sum total of all my experiences. And if you, from what you just said, Anne, I'm thinking that we pick up things along the way, and we may not, like you say, we may not use them right at that moment, but they're going to be there. And so I think that makes a lot of sense.
May I?
Yes.
I think that one of the things we pick up along the way to make the difference between our thoughts, our feelings, our fears in our soul. At first, it's all mixed up. And I have many times in my life that I know now that I knew from my soul what I had to do, and I did not. Because my fear gets in, my desire gets in, my fear of what other people would think of, and be easy to receive social pressure got in, and I would not listen. And there are a few things I've dearly paid for that. And other times I did what I was deeply feeling, and even though it was not necessarily well accepted around me, I receive it with deep peace. And I think that this peace is the final reason and the final proof. And when you listen to that, in the long term, you realize that everything is fine for everyone. But it's difficult, and that's what experience, I think, helped most. And sometimes it is our own desires. I made jokes about my little voice, and sometimes she would just tell me things like, take an umbrella when I don't want to. And I have listened and not listened in my life. And when I don't listen, every time I pay for it. And now we have those funny dialogue with my little voice when she would say, well, you know, you do what you want. You know what will happen afterward. That's your problem. And when she says that, I do what she tells me. And she was right. But it is a matter of observing and making the difference where what we think and feel, where it comes from. And that's the difficult part. Over.
It's one of the reasons I love this group is that we all kind of play off each other's thoughts about this. And I think, where's that line which I got a big kick out of, Linda, when you said, I'm not reading the French. In English, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. And I put a little star next to it because, you know, when I'm getting frustrated or stressed out with a work situation or a home situation, if I would just pause and say that, and and I'm not one to be real vocal in a negative way at all, we all know otherwise about my vocalness. But if I would train myself to have a mantra like that, I think it could be very helpful. Over.
I agree. I've used that mantra quite a bit, actually, for years. And I guess getting back to the original question of Angela's, the one thing I think people have pretty much covered most of the things that I would say, but the one tool that I have used in the past, and I still will occasionally use it, is muscle testing. So if I'm not 100% sure, is this my head talking or is this my heart talking? Which when I say my heart, that's my soul, that's my spirit. I'll muscle test because sometimes I think I should be doing something that I really don't need to be doing, and a lot of times muscle testing will be the tool that I'll use to get the final yay or nay.
Can you explain that, Linda?
So muscle testing is based on the science of kinesiology, and I can't speak a lot about how kinesiology works, but the basic premise is that every cell in your body knows everything, just like this book is saying. And so, I'll just ask. So the way I do it is I'll link these two and these two. So my index and my thumb and my pinky and my thumb. And I ask the question and then I just pull. And if it's a no, not something, I cannot hold my fingers together, no matter how hard I try. If the answer is no, it'll come apart. And if the answer is yes, no matter how hard I try, I can't pull them apart. And so that's how it works. There are other ways that you can do it, but that's the way that I use.
Yeah,
pendulums. People use pendulums too.
I've seen it as a demonstration where somebody else was asking the questions of the person.
Right.
And actually, Wayne Dyer used to do this on stage, where he'd say, I want you to hold saccharin up, or I'm going to hold saccharin up and place it near your heart. And I want you, and then he would try to pull the other person's arms apart or whatever. And it's very fascinating just how your thoughts are so powerful. And thank you for bringing that in, because I haven't even thought about muscle testing in a long time, but I might start it again. Over.
I liked it, Linda. Thank you. I'm sorry, Alton. Because the pendulum stopped working for me the day I realized I could make it work in the direction I wanted with my mind. So then I couldn't trust it anymore.
Right.
And I stopped using it.
That's very interesting. I'd like to throw in on a simpler level, maybe before you develop a practice that way, just tuning into your body. Where am I tense? Am I holding muscle tension? A lot of people hold their tension, or their, the argument going on between their ego and their soul in their lower back. So just as a starter, but to resolve that argument and bring the bridge between the two, just simple tuning into your body. Where am I tense? Why am I holding this tension? Relax. So that's kind of a beginner stage before getting onto a more developed practice that way. Over.
That's a very good point. I find those of you that have the camera, I can always tell when my shoulders are up around my ears. It's like, oh, put it down and smile, whether I feel like smiling or not, because for some reason when you smile, it's hard not to feel a little bit less tense and more happy. But it'll be funny because I get up from my desk about once an hour during an 8-hour workday, 10-hour workday, and I will go outside and just walk around my driveway. And I'll realize while I'm walking that I've got my shoulders up there. And anyway, that's another thing. You know, it's like your back, wherever it is you're doing it. But I don't know why I just raise my shoulders up. That's my tell. Over. Well, we've only got a few minutes left. Not enough to read. But I want to remind everybody that Tuesday is Global Oneness Day.
Oh,
Yep. And if you haven't been bombarded by almost all the emails I've written to all of you, I mean, I'm ready to drop from the mailing list. But anyway, please join us. And if you can't join us on Tuesday or for only part of the day, whatever the reason is, there will be complimentary replays. So you won't be charged for anything. And there's no charge to come for the event itself on Tuesday. And anyway, it should be a good time and lots of good speakers and thoughts. And like I said, almost immediately after the day is over, you'll be able to access recordings if you can't be there. Because
Can you state where this is happening or something? Because I didn't receive an email on it. So.
Okay, well, it's happening on October 24th at 8:15 in the morning Pacific time. And it goes all day long. And if you can access globalonenesssummit.org, that's where you'll see there'll be a player, like a TV screen.
Okay, I can follow that. Yeah.
Yep.
That's all I needed to know. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Nanette, can I just say something before we go?
Yes, you may.
Please. I'm with actually my son's house at the moment, and I did say that I would ask the group. He knows that I come to the group each Sunday, and I often read him quotations, daily quotations. And we talked about no coincidences, and I did tell him that I would say this to the group today. His father will be moving to his town very shortly. He's got a house a few streets away, and my son and daughter-in-law went to the furniture has been moved in, and they went around. He's not moving up until next week, but they went around to the house to do whatever, and went to lock the door and found that they couldn't lock the door. So they called the locksmith, and the locksmith came out and dealt with it. They came home and found that they couldn't open their own door. They couldn't unlock it. So they had to call a locksmith back to change their lock. So what I'm asking is it a coincidence? Because CWG says there's no coincidences. And he asked me about this, and I just said I would mention it to the group today and see if there was any thoughts. Not that I expect any answers from anyone, but it's just such a coincidence that it's a bit mind-boggling. Over.
I would say, am I muted? No. My initial reaction is, so the house that they were moving to, they couldn't lock the door, and the house that they were moving from, they couldn't get back in when they went back?
Well, they're not actually moving house. My son's father-in-law is moving a couple of streets away. He's going to be moving into a new house. So they went around to the house while the furniture was being delivered. And when they went to leave, they couldn't lock the door. So they had to call the locksmith. And then they went back to their own house, and they couldn't open their lock. They couldn't open their door. They had to get the locksmith back. So it's just such a coincidence that should happen at that time. Yet we know that there are no coincidences.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I agree. I don't think it's a coincidence, and at the same time, I'm not sure that there's a message that you know that you could get out of it. It could just be that the doorknob sprites got woken up.
Say that again, sorry.
I said it could just be that the doorknob sprites got woken up.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for listening to that. I said to my son I would share it. So.
Well, I just want to add one other thing. Sometimes when the coincidences come around, it'll be a week, 2 weeks, a couple days, where I'll go, oh, because it might be something that hasn't even happened. And sometimes, like Linda says, maybe one of those things, it's just the sprites of the locks.
I like Sarah's suggestion. Maybe it's happened simply to be able to have this conversation about how things work.
Definitely. Thanks,
That's
Sarah.
a great point.
Yeah.
And it's also possible and reality to just ask your soul for a message to tell you what's going on, depending on what way you use to communicate with spirit. We've heard today mention of clairvoyance, seeing a vision from within, clairaudience, hearing from within what the story is. In dreams, it all depends on what practices you have developed or are developing to understand what these communications are about. And definitely, I think there's some message there. I just don't have the interpretation of the message for you. Over.
Thanks, Alton.
That's I'm almost wish you would have brought that subject up earlier, but we can maybe take a leap next week in a little bit of a different way at the beginning of the call and say, does anybody else want to talk more about that? Because I think it's a very interesting subject. And in the heart of the chapter that was just read, it is about paying attention. It's paying attention and being able to talk to yourself at a cellular level. That was almost hard to say. Anyway, until next time, I love you guys.
I love you.
Always will. And
Bye.
Bye-bye. Next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Uh,